There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from being alone. It happens when you're surrounded by people, talking, responding, existing normally, and still, something inside you doesn't fully settle, not loud enough to explain, not sharp enough for anyone else to notice, just a quiet sentence that keeps returning in different forms. No one really understands me, and even when you say it in your mind, you don't fully know what you want someone to do about it. You just know something is not reaching where it should. You've probably noticed this in small moments. You say something simple about how you feel, and the response comes back slightly off, not wrong, not offensive, just not it. So you try again. You adjust the way you speak. You choose different words. You add more explanation than necessary, as if the problem is clarity, as if the feeling just needs better packaging. And for a while, you believe that. You think if you explain it correctly once, it will finally land the way it exists inside you, but it rarely does. Not because people don't listen, but because what you're carrying inside is not a simple thought. It's layered, mixed, sometimes even contradictory, and language only carries the surface of it. Everything deeper gets compressed. At some point, something subtle shifts. You stop fixing your words as much, not because you stop caring, but because you start noticing something uncomfortable. Even when you explain yourself perfectly, there's still a gap, so you begin to accept the gap instead of fighting it. And that's where most people misunderstand themselves. They think they've become quiet, or distant, or less expressive. But that's not what actually happened. What changed is effort. You stopped trying to translate yourself fully every time. Because translation without return feels like repetition. Pause here for a moment. Think about this carefully. Have you ever left a conversation feeling like you were present, but not fully met? Like your words were there, but your inner meaning stayed behind? That feeling is not rare. It just isn't discussed. Over time, this creates a pattern. You still talk, you still respond, you still show up, but internally, you begin to expect something small, not rejection, not misunderstanding, just partial reception. And when you expect it long enough, you stop being surprised by it, and slowly, without realizing it, you start editing yourself before anyone else does. You remove parts of your thoughts while they are still forming, not because you're hiding, but because you've learned what usually doesn't land. And this is where the real shift happens. You don't become someone with less to say, you become someone with more that stays unspoken, not because it's secret, but because it feels too detailed for the space it's entering. Here's something most people never notice about this feeling. It doesn't mean you are hard to understand. It usually means you are trying to express something that exists at a deeper resolution than the conversation you're currently in. So even when people understand you correctly, it still feels incomplete to you because part of what you meant never made it out fully. And when that happens enough times, you start building a quiet belief. Not spoken, just carried. That full understanding is not something you can consistently expect, so you adapt, not by shutting down, but by simplifying what you offer of yourself. But here is the hidden cost of that adaptation. The more you simplify what you express, the less opportunity there is for anything deeper to be recognized. And over time, it creates a loop. Less expression leads to less depth being seen. Less depth being seen leads to less reason to express it until it starts feeling like distance, even when nothing has actually broken. And here's the part that often gets missed completely. You are not completely misunderstood, and you are not completely unseen. You are partially met and partially unshared. Some parts of you are understood easily. Some parts never get presented at all anymore. And both of those things exist at the same time, because at some point you learned something quietly, that not everything you feel arrives in other people the way it exists in you. So instead of risking distortion, you started choosing omission. So when you think, no one understands me, it's often not a statement about people. It's a reflection of a gap that has formed between what you feel and what you still allow yourself to fully express. And that gap doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It just means something inside you is still unspoken in its full form. Not louder, not more emotional, just more accurately expressed than you've allowed so far. Because understanding doesn't always fail. Sometimes it just never gets the full version of you to begin with.